Hey there, Detroit sports fanatics, and welcome to episode 166 of the Detroit Sports Truth on Spreaker. I'm Taylor Phillips. I'm with my number one co-host, Ed Smith. How are we doing tonight? Welcome to Spreaker.
Welcome, Taylor. Pleasure to be joining you this evening. How about yourself?
Pretty good. So tonight we're going to talk about the Tigers' firing of Brad Ausmus at the end of the season, Mike Ilitch's decision to hire Ron Gardenhire instead of Manny Acta.
Are you out of your mind?
Jim Harbaugh's big house debut against Oregon State. We're going to look back to Michigan and Utah. We're also going to look back at Michigan State at Western Michigan before their rematch against the Oregon Ducks in East Lansing. Plus, we'll touch on the Lions. Plus, we'll touch on the Lions roster cuts, including cutting tight end Joseph Fourier, very surprising. We'll preview the Lions-Chargers matchup as well. Oh, I almost forgot. The Monmouth CMU game starting at 3. I'll touch on that for a bit before the Lions. And finally, Ed Smith will give his preview of the Floyd Mayweather-Andre Berto match tomorrow night on pay-per-view. So let's get this started with the Tigers, shall we?
That one is long gone.
So, a bit earlier, about a day or two ago, we heard that the Tigers will fire Brad Ausmus at the end of the season, which is no doubt.
It's basically a formality at this point.
Yep. Tigers got rained out in Cleveland. They'll have a doubleheader Sunday at 1. They lost 7-5 to the Indians last night. But yeah, that's just good news for the Tigers falling into last place in the division, the second worst record in the American League.
The division they have owned consecutively for the past 2 years, and also a division where they had a tremendous payroll advantage, and yet they're in the position that they are right now. It really speaks volumes to how much of a absolute disaster this year has been in more ways than one.
And the Oakland Athletics have the worst. And the Oakland Athletics have the worst record in the American League. But the Tigers are about to approach that point. If they want to get that number one draft pick, as I was going to mention, in MLB next year, they better finish last in the entire majors.
And that's shocking to say when you're considering a team that, like I said, in addition to winning their division consecutively for about four or so years, at one point World Series contenders, to see them go chop off from that to last place, disappointing definitely, but also on the whole just really shocking, I would have to say. But hey, we just got we're less than a month away, for all intents and purposes. So just ride it out, and this whole miserable ride will be over. Office will be fired, and then we'll see what we can do with the next guy that we hire. Even though, to be honest, I don't like the name.
So moving on from Brad Ausmus, and the Tigers will too after season's end. Al Avila has decided he wants to expand his focus on analytics, including the sabermetrics, and if he were to hire a manager by his own power, he would hire Manny Acta, but owner Mike Ilitch decided to have a manager with even more experience in former Minnesota Twins manager Ron Gardenhire.
Are you out of your mind?
Instead of Acta. I mean, I was like, what? That was a source from Justin Spiro of the Detroit Sports Rag, the number 2 guy in command under Jeff Moss.
Spiro, who also, by the way, broke the news that Ausmus was going to be fired a mere 17 days before WDIV and Bernie Smilovich claimed as an exclusive. So, once again, props to Spiro on that, as well as the DSR as a whole, breaking yet another story before the local Detroit sports media could. And even though WDIV and even the Free Press did a shameful job in not giving proper credit, or in essence stealing the credit, you're seeing other writers and pundits, such as even Ken Rosenthal, of all people, giving credit to Spiro's story first. So good for them on that. Shame on WDIV and Free.
Yeah, the DSR unanimously defeated WDIV and the Free Press combined. The DSR is just so good out there in the entire media industry.
Say what you want about how they present themselves. I guess of how aggressive they are when they do attack certain people or point whatever. Especially Moss in general, he'll be the first one to tell you that about his own personality. But when it comes to getting stories right, they have a good track record of getting them right. Okay, this goes all the way back to the Rick Carlisle firing 2003, not to mention the Dave Brandon firing last year. Of course, the Jim Harbaugh hiring in conjunction with Greg Henson last year, and now this. So, say what you want. You may not like the person or the whole site in general, but you have to give credit where credit is due. And for a site like that, which, by the way, even when they're wrong on some things, the one thing you can say they do, they never steal someone else's credit. If someone else breaks it for them, they always give credit where credit is due. And that's what it all boils down to. So it's a pretty crappy job spot here that they were not put in, but it's a crappy effort from from the Free and WDIV to, once again, like MS4, not give any credit to Spiro or even mention them as a source of breaking it first. We're seeing all these other outlets that are not local media, i.e. Ken Rosenthal, i.e. Katie Sprang, whatever her last name is at ESPN, giving credit where credit is due. So, the DSR is no joke. If you look past, the outskirts, I guess, look past, Moss's aggressive nature, you will find good, informative content as well as tips and reporting, investigative news breaking.
So, for Mike Ilitch to decide to go with Ron Gardenhire instead of Manny Acta, who is old school yet anti-math, just like Jim Leyland was in his 8-year tenure as the Tigers manager before he stepped down after 2013. And before Dombrowski decided to hire Ausmus, Mike Ilitch warned Dombrowski that Ausmus wasn't a good fit at all as a manager. But,
well, in a way, he was proven right. But as much as I love Ilitch's, knowing that he was dead on about Ausmus, I don't get the reasoning to go and hire here. I mean, I guess you can say, he swayed with him as he was with Leland. Both had that old school feel. Leland, of course, was the manager of the Marlins in '97 when they won the World Series. Gardenhire, of course, was the manager of the Twins when they were on their brief run of winning Central Division titles. And I guess Ellis thinks, hey, if you put that with this roster, maybe we got a shot. But here's the thing. Gardenhire has not done very well in the postseason. He has, I believe 6 wins when he was the manager of the Twins in the playoffs.
6-21.
Exactly. So with a record like that, say what you want about the roster or anything, if you are 6-21 record in the postseason as a manager, really something is not going right for you, okay? Or that should be a telling sign or a red flag to say, hey, if we're going to hire you to run this team that has this roster and this type of payroll, as well as a desperate owner who wants to see you bring a World Series title to the city of Detroit before he dies, I don't think this is exactly the right move. I mean, period. Acta, say what you want about what he did with the Indians, but I think Acta would have been a much better choice. A, he gets the sabermetrics route.
Yep.
B, I think he would get along with his players, have much better chemistry, so to speak, than Ausmus would or even Gardenhire would. And yes, it's probably based on the Hispanic connection that the clubhouse would share with him. But still, I
with
think...
Alavila.
Yeah, Alavila, of course, and of course the Hispanic and Venezuelan players that are on the roster, namely Cabrera. But even still, right, and like you mentioned, it fits perfectly with Alavila's choice of, hey, wanting to go new age, wanting to go fit in with today's system and focusing not entirely, but at least a good portion of sabermetrics and analytics. So you go with a route of, which again is so old school. I don't know what else to say other than no, it's not what we want, and you really hope it doesn't. You hope it's not as bad. It shouldn't be as bad as what Ausmus is, but I don't think this is the right move in terms of wanting to put you in immediate contention to win a championship, even if you make the right roster moves in the off season.
So we all know we wanted Acta. Most people, as you pointed out, we're not so much Manny Acta fans, but most people were missing the math, the sabermetrics and the analytics. But we just persuaded it.
Not to mention basic things such as bunting, or rather not bunting. So,
yep.
For those that hate bunting, especially bunting in inopportune moments, we may be seeing more of that with Gardenhire at the helm.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I was going to ask. Yeah, does Gardenhire like to bunt? That's one of my 5 questions.
It's time for 5 questions with Taylor the Gator Phillips.
If that's the case, oh boy.
Yep. Yeah, and Brad Ausmus and Jim Leland individually like to bunt so many times, especially Ausmus.
I mean, if Leland, I guess you could say a Class 1 or a Class 2 offender, Ausmus is clearly a Class 3 or even a Class 4 offender. So...
Yeah, we remember back in 2002 when he got in trouble in that one plane with Jeff Weaver and Robert Fick. But it's no wonder Ausmus was a terrible human being overall, not just a terrible manager.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be saying derogatory things about a possible sexual harassment victim, well, that puts you in a fine candidate for most scummiest person of the year, not to mention by being a horrible, idiotic baseball manager to begin with at all. So... you will not be seeing that any much sympathy for me regarding Brad Ausmus. In fact, I wish he was fired right now. But I guess the Tigers organization and brass, they recognize that Brad hasn't been too much of an embarrassment off the field per se this year. And I guess they'll let him finish out the season to, in their own mind, give him a sense of dignity as opposed to firing him right now like they did with Dabrowski after the trade deadline.
some of the members of the DSR pointed out that he should have been fired in like late July, and that could have been the case since the Tigers bowed out.
Big argument. Right, you could have made a big argument. Cabrera had gotten hurt, and they went on the fire sale route at trade deadline. And not to mention, coming off the heels of getting rid of Dombrowski, or maybe this was beforehand, my math may be off here, but this would have been a perfect time to do that. You have Gene Lamont, finish out the rest of the year as an interim, and then you start off with a completely fresh, clean slate next year.
Yeah, they traded David Price, Joaquim Soria, and Jonas Cespedes. Cespedes to the Mets, Soria to the Pirates, David Price to the Blue Jays. He's pitching solid over there. The Blue Jays are like a well-oiled mega ultrazord over there. They lead the AL East now.
Right, the Blue Jays are at a point where if they don't make the World Series, it'll be considered a shocker, especially seeing how Price has just performed since going over there. And with the way Price is pitching, I highly doubt the Tigers will be able to even have enough money to bring him back in the offseason. I would rather just do that, use that money to A, possibly get Cespedes back, and B, get another couple pitchers back that, have good value still left in their career and won't cost them nearly as much. I wouldn't mind seeing them bringing back Doug Fister, I believe. I believe he is a free agent this offseason, either restricted or, I don't know if it's restricted or unrestricted. I do believe he's free agent this offseason, so I wouldn't mind the Tigers bringing him back. Not to mention the Johnny Cuetos or maybe the James Shields of the world, that type of thing. I don't know if Shields has a long-term contract. I'm just pulling names out, but I do know Cueto will be available. And I'm pretty sure Fister will be available. So those two names will look pretty good on a Tiger starting rotation, especially when you see Verlander starting to regain the form that he's, not quite 2011, 2012, but still very, very good. And the only thing you have to hope for basically at this point is Anibal Sanchez gets sorted out, and you still have a very, very fine MLB caliber level of a rotation. Not as great as we saw in 2012 or 2013, but still pretty damn good. Like I mentioned, Cespedes, I think there's a chance you can bring him back and put some more pop in your bat in your offense for next year. And if Victor Martinez gets his head straight, you're still looking at him, Miggy, Cespedes, and of course the gem that is now JD Martinez. So again, you have the right tools in place to maybe find a way to go and contend, especially if you make the right offseason moves. But when you presumably hire Ron Gardenhire, it doesn't make me completely confident in your abilities to have a deep October run next year. It just doesn't.
No, again, with that 6-21 career postseason record, that's just not going to do you much. No, Gardenhire never even reached the American League divisions. Gardenhire never even reached the American League championship series. Yeah, he reached. Yeah, he won the Central Division 6 times, but that got him to the ALDS. He never reached the ALCS. Technically, that doesn't get that never got the Twins anywhere close to the World Series. As a result, and that's just not a good champion, not considered a championship manager.
Now, granted, a couple of years you would say you can probably make an argument. A couple of those years they ran into the Yankees when the Yankees were unstoppable. But even still, what about the other teams, the other years? What's their excuse on that? So again, it all comes down to, unless I can see with my own eyes, and that this team can perform very well in October with Gardenheimer as their manager, then I would give my vote of confidence. It's see it when I believe it. I believe it when I see it type of deal. But based on paper, and it's been proven not just on paper but with actual facts and tests, Brian Gardenheimer has not been a good postseason manager. Hopefully, we'd like to see that change. But until then, we're on the very, very cautious side.
Yeah, especially him being anti-Matt. That's the most important factor that comes into play.
Yeah, that's another big red flag for me, other than the postseason record. So Hope he does well. That's all you can say at this point, but not too confident.
It's a domino effect. The anti-math thing does affect your postseason record career-wise, and how much you know about math, advanced math and sabermetrics and advanced statistics. Those things help you make the right decisions. Manny Acta knows it best.
Which is why you can tell this was clearly a case of Mike Ilitch just, I'm sure he trusts Al Avila to do a good job as GM. In fact, why hire him, to be the guy in the first place, or name the guy rather, after you got rid of Dombrowski. But you can tell this is clearly an Ilitch call. I think if it was more so Avila having more power, he will probably get someone, not necessarily Acta, but definitely someone that fits his realm, his qualifications rather, in terms of wanting to embrace the more sabermetric side of things.
Like Gabe Kapler?
Maybe, but I guess by general consensus, we were going with Acta since that's the most prominent name that matches Al Avila's wants and needs, and trying to find a new manager for the team next year. But Ilitch stepped in, apparently, and it looks like we'll be getting Ron Gardenhire. By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if Spiro and or the DSR doesn't get little to no credit again when Gardenhire is announced that he'll be the next Tigers manager. Now, something changes, and somehow, our wildest dreams come true. It won't be Gardenhire in the bed. It'll be Acta. I'll be so happy. I'm sure Spiro and the DSR and Moss will be more than happy to be wrong on this occasion, but I just don't see it happening.
This podcast is now syndicated on Local Spin Detroit. You can find it on localspindetroit.com. You can also find this on iHeartRadio, the Detroit Sports Truth, with Taylor Phillips. I am with special co-host Ed Smith. He is actually my number one co-host from Blog Talk Radio. This is his first time on Spreaker. We're going to take this 40-plus minutes here in episode 166.
Maybe go longer than that, since it's been over 20 talking about Tigers and talking about strictly Tigers. Hopefully we can try to condense as much as possible with these other few topics.
Yep, 22 minutes and 44 seconds and counting up. Let's go on to the Michigan Wolverines.
Touchdown, Michigan!
Michigan lost to Utah 24-17. Jake Rudock threw 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, one of them being a pick six to Travis Wilson, making it 24-10. That's pretty much the dagger. And Jim Harbaugh's debut. Jim Harbaugh will be making his big house debut this Saturday against the Oregon State Beavers. That's at noon on ABC. Another they are taking on a Pac-12 opponent, and it's another key matchup for the Maize and Blue in Ann Arbor.
Well, I guess you can, even though I hate to call it a must-win type of game, especially for a non-conference game, an opponent who's not exactly a top-tier, opponent for a non-conference schedule.
All right, it's early.
It's way too early to be thinking that. But if you're Michigan, you want to get on, especially after how things went last week in Utah. That's another thing. If I could, I would have loved to have mentioned or previewed or even reviewed instantly as it happened last week with Utah. Despite the very below average, just outright bad quarterback play from Rudock, it was still a closely contested game that Michigan, believe it or not, had a chance to tie or even win. The defense, I thought, did as good a job as they possibly could have. I would have liked to have gone off the field on third down a couple of times, but they did an adequate job. The the defensive line, the front seven, got good penetration. They almost stifled, what's the kid's name, the running back of Utah, Booker. I think that's his last name. I forgot his first name, but Booker was his last name. They stifled him. They got good pressure sometimes, and they even got a sack or two on the quarterback. Chris Wormley, I heard his name being called more than a few times, so he impressed me, especially in that first half. Jabril Peppers, I think, had a bit of a slow, rusty start, but he more than made up for it, made some good tackles in the second half. So really the defense kept Michigan in this game throughout against Utah, and I expect them to do that the whole entire season. No, well, not every single game. I'm not expecting the teams to 10, 17, under 20 points per game all year long. Probably be a couple games where the offense is going to have to go toe for toe in a shootout, slugfest to win. Probably you can win a game where you can keep close. But I liked what I saw from the defense. Offensive side of the ball, there's so much work to be done, particularly with the running game. Forget about the quarterback issues. We need an established running attack, whether it be better blocking from the O-line or just flat out better production from the running back. Davion Smith did not impress me at all. To me, it looked like he had little to no burst at all at the first level to even get to the second level. He probably had a couple of nice runs, about 5 to 8 yards, but other than that, nothing impressive. And I thought his field vision or lack thereof was very troubling to see. It should be noted that on the play before the Rudolph pick six, Smith gives the ball on a handoff second down. And if he just merely looks to his left, he sees grass, complete and utter daylight on the left side that gives him a big first down, maybe even a touchdown. But of course, no, he goes straight into the teeth of the defense of the line with all the bodies around, and that stops short of the first down, which of course led to the pick six, the next play, which effectively ended the game. So, as opposed to Devion Smith, I would like to see more of Ty Isaac, and I just remember seeing a tweet earlier today that Drake Johnson, I believe, apparently will play against Oregon State. Maybe he'll get some reps in as a second or third, probably at the third string back on the depth chart since Derek Green, and now apparently has been moved to fourth string. He didn't look impressive either, and I guess apparently after retweeting some folks saying he should have got more carries, I'm pretty sure the coaches didn't like that, so they sat his behind now in fourth string. So how about that? How do you like them apples? Now, for Ty Isaac, I like what I saw out of him. I hope he gets more reps. I'm still thinking, Harbaugh will still give Devion Smith a shot as the first string, as the number one running back. But I hope to see more of Ty Isaac, and of course, when Drake Johnson gets full-blown, 100% healthy. Probably is practically healthy now, of course, because why else would he be playing right now? But I like to see more of Drake Johnson and Ty Isaac as far as the running game is concerned from moving on forward. Now, the Devion could surprise me, but if he doesn't, more Isaac and Johnson, please. Now, for the quarterback play, I'm willing to give Rudolph another shot. If he stinks it up again the way he did against Utah, yes, of course, I'd like to see a quarterback change. I highly doubt we'll be seeing him throw 3 picks again, 2 straight games. I hope that doesn't come back to bite me, but strange things have happened. It should be noted that he also overthrew basically 2 touchdown passes. So it was not a good first outing for him. And remember, this is supposed to be a fifth-year senior transfer from Iowa. You would think he knows better, or would know how to adjust better on the fly, that type of thing. But I'm willing to give him another option, another chance, rather, at redemption, especially since it's the home crowd, the home opener. As for Harbaugh, I'm sure he would have loved to have gotten the win in his official debut last week, but I'm thinking he'd be more than fine getting that first win in front of the familiarity of the home crowd, because Utah, let's not disparage Utah here. To me, they're looking to be a pretty good team. In fact, I'm watching right now on ESPN2. They're handling the business against Utah State. So Utah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're a potential Pac-12 contender down the road later this year. If not this year, then certainly next year. So Michigan's got nothing to be ashamed of in losing to a team, especially on the road at night. Now when it comes to taking care of things at home, yeah, they better win. They better win, especially before we get to the meat of the conference schedule. I expect them to win tomorrow against Oregon State, and I expect them to win. Go on a brief winning streak, 2-3 games, and even win their conference opener against Minnesota, even though that's on the road. So I wouldn't be surprised if they are 5-1, 4-2, something like that, heading into Michigan State. So those are my expectations for the Wolverines for this first half of the year under the new regime. Now, you wouldn't mind if we broke down some Spartans talk, do we?
Yeah, let's talk about the Spartans, huh?
Touchdown, MSU!
They beat Western Michigan, the Broncos, 37-24 last week. Their defense was a little shaky in the second half, but or maybe the first half as well, but they still managed to hold off the Broncos in Kalamazoo at Waldo Stadium to 24 points. The offense rolled a bit, 37 points. They rematch in their home opener against the Oregon Ducks, the rematch from last year when the Spartans led 27-18 at halftime, and then Oregon rolled with 28 points to beat Michigan State 46-27. I was at the Ultimate Tailgate Party watching that. I got my picture taken with Lauren, Allison, and Angela, the Fox Sports Detroit girls, at that place, by the way. But back to the Michigan State Oregon rematch. The Spartans are looking for revenge. Their defense needs to improve and tighten up a bit. Their offense kind of needs to step it up a notch or two as well. They should, but most importantly, they should not collapse in the second half like they did last year.
Yeah, the second half it was very troubling, especially of an Antonio team that we see nowadays. With the Antonio teams, you expect good, strong defensive efforts. You do not see leakings and busterings like we saw last year in that second half. Rare occurrence, but you hope you don't see that often, because here you go, you face up against the same high-powered system of an offense yet again for a second straight year. Like I mentioned before, Oregon will find a way to rebuild, not rebuild, but reload. They reloaded after Dennis Dixon, they reloaded after Michael James, and they will certainly reload after Chip Kelly. They reloaded after Chip Kelly left, and they will certainly find a way to reload after the departure of Marcus Mariota. Now, as evidence, they put up 60-plus points last week. Now, for Michigan State, there's other things they can do here. One, they better hope their special teams doesn't allow another touchdown, because that would really make things even harder for them to win. But with it being at home, and it's their home opener, and I think, like you said, the theme of revenge is on their mind, I expect this to be a much closely contested game. Now, the question is, can MSU make the right plays, make the right adjustments, and most importantly, not make the same mistakes that they did last year to not only keep it close, but if it didn't actually win? I don't know. I'm just by nature, not by nature, but I guess in a head type of thing, say Oregon, but I wouldn't be actually surprised at all if Michigan State wins this game. That being said, I am picking Oregon, probably win it by a close margin. But even if MSU loses, they got nothing to be doubt about, because they could still win the Big Ten this year, and possibly ruin Ohio State's chances to win the national title. So even if they lose this game against Oregon, I wouldn't quite count them out of the national playoff race yet, because they still got a whole long season to go where they can dominate and crush in the conference, and like I mentioned before, ruin Ohio State's chances. And if you beat Ohio State, in my view, that could put Michigan State in a good chance to be part of the selected four for the playoff.
Yeah, I think I agree there. So, how do you think Michigan State will do this season, by the way?
If they get more than 3 wins, 3 losses rather, I'll be shocked. Absolutely shocked. Anything, and to be honest, I'll be even mildly surprised if they get more than 2 losses. That's how strong I think of a team they could be this year. And even though you're dealing with Ohio State in your division, in your conference, at least, you're only dealing with once. If you're playing them 2 times, that will lower, like you would in the NFL, that would lower my expectations, prediction rather, for your win. I see them doing no worse than 9 wins. Best case scenario, they do 10 and above. Win the Big Ten, even if they don't get the playoff, they probably, if they win the Big Ten, they get another Rose Bowl spot, right? So, I will be very surprised if this MSU team doesn't, if not match, doesn't, at least try to match what they've done in recent years, having good, very good, great regular seasons, and closing it out with a terrific showing and a win in the bowl game.
All right, I'm going to move on to the Chippewas real quick. Central Michigan is taking on the Monmouth Hawks at Kelly Short Stadium Saturday at 3 in Mount Pleasant at the campus of CMU. It's going to be on ESPN3, the Watch ESPN app, and WCFX 95.3 FM in Mount Pleasant and Clare. Kevin Callahan is the Monmouth head coach. He's had 23 seasons of experience, 126 and 102. It's kind of a bit above average versus John Bonamego 0-1 in his first season. Very inexperienced, like Brad Ausmus was.
Basically, this will be the college equivalent of Jim Leland versus Brad Ausmus, record-wise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the Monmouth Hawks' first ever game against an FBS team in CMU. Monmouth finished 6-5 overall and 1-5 in the conference last year. Its first season in the Big South Conference. Monmouth lost their season opener this year to Holy Cross 27-19. The Hawks' biggest offensive playmaker last season was junior running back Levon Chaney. This is an article from Central Michigan Life, cm-life.com, written by Dominic Mastrangelo. Chaney rushed for 873 yards and 8 touchdowns last fall. As a sophomore, he was an All-Big South second-team selection and had 1 touchdown last week against Holy Cross. 9 starters are back from a season ago from Monmouth, including safety Mike Basil, the league's Rookie of the Year last year. And for CMU, head coach John Bonamego watched last week's Monmouth versus Holy Cross game on ESPN3 through his cable provider on a streaming service. He said, quote, "They really built that program up. I was impressed with how they competed against Holy Cross. They got down early but showed a lot of grit to battle back into that game. They just made too many mistakes," unquote. The Hawks turned the ball over 4 times in last week's loss. CMU turned the ball over against Oklahoma State, the Cowboys, just once in a 24-13 loss at Kelly Shorts on junior quarterback Cooper Rush's first pass of the game, an interception. Keeping Chaney contained will be a key for CMU defense that held OSU's high-octane offense to less than 25 points in the season opener. Bonamego said they do a good job. They do a good job of getting the ball to him. They have playmakers. Defensively, they are a bend but don't break team, unquote. Senior Chippewa linebacker Tim Hamilton said he and his teammates don't consider how any opponent looks on paper or hold any preconceived notions about where a school lies amid the greater college football landscape. Hamilton said, quote, "We really only want to focus on ourselves. I was impressed with the job some of our guys did on defense against OSU, Oklahoma State, flying around to the ball. It'd be nice to come out and get that first W." Unquote. Bonamego said CMU's opponent this week should be taken seriously, and many of Monmouth's players could play in the Mid-American Conference. Bonamego added one last statement, quote, "We always try and worry about ourselves first. We can control ourselves. It comes back down to the process and the grind. I want to see us play a clean game, and learn from our mistakes last week." Now, my take on the CMU Monmouth matchup, I would like to see the offense improve and limit the turnovers and limit the 3-and-outs. If they can do that, they have a better chance of winning. I like what their defense had done against the Oklahoma State Cowboys offense. They still have Mike Gundy as their head coach from Oregon State. You remember his blow-up in 2007. "Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40.
"Oh, I'm a man. I'm 40. I remember that clip.
Yeah. I know, yeah. He was yelling to the media. "And the editor that let it come out is garbage." He was telling the truth, too.
I got a good chuckle of the sound clip of him saying the word fat.
Yeah. Yep. But back to CMU Monmouth. Monmouth has made too many mistakes, more than CMU has. I think the turnover margin is going to come into play the most. It's the most determining factor in this matchup. I'm going to say CMU 34, Monmouth 15, my prediction. So, with that said, let's go to the Detroit Lions.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
The Lions have made their roster cuts to trim their roster to 53. They added Zach Zenner, their undrafted rookie running back, from this year. He scored 2 game-winning touchdowns the last 2 preseason games. The Lions finished 3-1 the preseason. And surprisingly, after preseason game number 4, the Lions cut Kellen Moore, one of their backup quarterbacks, and their one-star tight end, Joseph Fourier. Wow.
Those are 2 names that definitely I did not see being on the cut list. Say what you want about, I guess, somebody being Kellen. I don't know. I just didn't like the cutting of Kellen Moore. One reason only. If for one reason you have Dan Orlovsky instead as your backup quarterback, Dan, the running out of the back of the end zone man. Okay, no. Kellen Moore is proven. Granted, it was, it may not have been a good conference that he was performing in college, but whenever Boise State got a chance to go up against a big-time opponent, they always showed out, and they always found a way to win. And Kellen Moore always found a way, played a good part in making some of those plays happen to put their team in a position to win. If it had not been for a bad night for their field goal kicker, Kellen Moore might have gotten Boise State to a BCS bowl game in his senior season. So, for him to be left off the roster, get cut rather than make the final cut, was disappointing for me to see. But I'm glad he's found a new home in Dallas, where I believe Scott Linehan is the offensive coordinator, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so there will be a nice sense of familiarity with him.
Oh,
so good
for the Lions?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Joe Lombardi.
Oh, Joe Lombardi. Yep, you're correct. Yep, either way, Linehan, Lombardi. Well, again, a sense of familiarity since he'll be with a once former offensive coordinator here. Now he'll be with another team. As for Fourier, I really loved his contribution in terms of being in the red zone over the past couple of years. And even though part of me is disappointed to see him not make the roster this year, you might have to wonder maybe the team was onto something, because when the preceding days before the cut was announced, Fourier, for some reason or another, began blocking media members on Twitter. I don't know what's the deal with that. I don't know if the kid has an attitude problem or whatever the case may be. But when you do something like that, maybe it speaks to why the team wanted to part ways from you at all. Still think he's talented. Still think he's got a future playing wise. I'm sure a team will love to pick him up. I wouldn't be surprised if I see him, with New Orleans or something like that. Especially if you need a guy to replace Jimmy Graham. There's a guy right there in Fourier. But it appears he may need to get that to check better if he wants to have a long-standing future in this league. Now, other than that, I think he made some good. He did what he needed to do. Zach Center had to have made this team, especially with the preseason that he's had. He needed to make this team, and I'm glad he did. Now you pair him with Theo Riddick, Joy Bell, Amir Abdullah. You have a good stable of running backs that you can have a multi-faced, versatile running game. And I think you may see an improved offensive line effort this year, especially in terms of run blocking. Number one, because Dominic Riola isn't there anymore. And two, I like what we see here. Manny Ramirez, Riley Reeve, Travis Swanson, Laken Tomlinson, we'll be a while for Laken, he's a drafted rookie, but Adrian Waddle, Larry Warford. You built this up as trying to convert a once well-known glaring weakness into now a push or even a strength. And you've done that through trades and drafting in the past few years. Especially this year, it was more prevalent, as well as taking Abdullah in second round, first round, second round, tertiary second round. And then, of course, Zenner, the undrafted rookie. So they obviously want to make sure, even though, yes, at the forefront, this is a passing team. You have Matthew Stafford with the big arm, Calvin Johnson, and Golden Tate as your weapons, as wide receivers. And, of course, your Eric, your first-round draft pick tight ends, even though I hate that they have that label, Eric Ebron and Brandon Pettigrew. But, you want to build yourself a secondary attack. And what better way to complement the air game, so to speak, with Stafford and the wide receivers, to build a cohesive running game. And I think you have an offensive line that's improved enough to make the right blocks and make the right holes. And now you have a good collection of backs. Joy, with good speed, Abdullah and Riddick and Zenner. Joy Bell's probably more of the power back, but I think he can give you some good runs from time to time as well. And once you get a good running game going, it takes immediate, tremendous amount of pressure off of Stafford trying to make plays all on his own, which in turn will lead to him making dumb mistakes. So if we see a more better effective running game this year for the Lions, we will see a more better decision making from Matthew Stafford, and in turn better production, in my view. It may not show the stats, but it will definitely show in terms of making the right plays, keeping the turnovers down, and keeping his team in a position to score touchdowns when they need touchdowns and to win games that they should be winning.
Yeah, and what about the defense? The safeties, Glover Quinn, Darius Slay. Yeah, we got to touch on those.
Definitely, for sure. The defense, let's see, with the backs itself, I do like, I like the addition of Glover Quinn. It was last year or the year before, I can't quite remember, but I really liked his addition. I think him and James Ahedigo, they'll make a good tandem for your safeties. So that sets the table, I guess, so to speak, for your secondary. You want to see one or two of your quarterbacks step up and make big contributions this year. We saw, I hate to use this comparison, but we saw what Malcolm Butler has done, did rather in the Super Bowl, and it's elevated him to now, hey, we're looking at you as the guy for our secondary since Darrell Reeves is gone. So that's what this, obviously I can't predict or project the same exact thing here for the Lions of all teams, but something to that nature, that effect. Now, for the rest of the defense, I think the defense is going to take a step back, period, because, number one, you lost to Dominican Sue, okay?
And Nick Fairley.
Yeah.
And C.J. Mosley.
As well. C.J. Mosley, but Sue and Fairley, especially Fairley, just two big losses, as well as C.J. Mosley as well. Even though, yes, you added Haloti Nata and Ezekiel Ansah is still there on the end. I think he's going to be, a good force to be reckoned with the past couple of years. The loss of Sue is just too much of a glaring thing to ignore. So even though Terrell Austin may do another swell job as coordinator this year, I don't see the defense being quite near as effective as they were a year ago. So I expect them to take a step back in terms of production quality this year, but I still expect them to be adequate. I'm not saying they're going to be one of the worst defenses in the league, okay, but I'd still say outskirts of the top 10, borderline top 10, that sort of thing, because you got some good players. Now, granted, you're still going to need a few of them to remain healthy, i.e. DeAndre Levy, which is why it sucks that he's going to be able to miss. He's going to be missing the season opener against San Diego, because I think he's going to be a guy in the next couple of years. You're going to have him be one of your leaders, if not the de facto leader on your defense, right now, especially for the linebackers. Stephen Tollett's there. Glad to have him back from tearing his ACL, but it's an ACL injury, and when you're a year older, Tollett's in his 30s, mid-30s maybe. Let me check real quick. Yeah, well, we just turned 30, but still, ACLs are not exactly an easy thing to come back from. So you don't know if he's going to get better or if he's going to decline more after this. So, which is, I guess you could say the somewhat unknown nature of what Tollett can bring and produce to the linebackers, to the defense as a whole, is why we need to make sure that DeAndre Levy stays as healthy as possible, because you can clearly see he's been improving more and more so year after year ever since he's been drafted. But with the other linebackers, we'll see what Kyle Van Noy and Zaire Whitehead can bring. Defense as a whole, I expect them to still be good, still be, adequate, but just take a step back after last year. And you kind of expect that when you lose, not just in Dominican Sue, but Nick Fairley as well.
So, also Kyle Van Noy is in there at linebacker. How do you think he'll help the defensive line?
He'll probably come in, I guess you could say, well, he was a third-team All-American in 2013. Won a couple of linebacker trophies, defensive player trophy during his time at BYU. Pretty sure, I guess, if my math is correct, he was also a teammate with Ansah. So, since they both played at BYU. So I guess the familiarity is there with that aspect. So I guess it could be another rush partner with Ansah, I guess, in terms of coming at the quarterback on passing situations, or even, and of course, on third and longs. So I guess Van Noy could be a guy you could help bring in as an extra blitzer, extra attacker when blitzing the quarterback and trying to apply pressure. Even though the past several years, the Lions defense was known as just use your front four to create pressure. Well, you're going to need more of that because, like I mentioned, not only Sue is gone, but so is Fairley. So you're going to need all the help that you can get from the rest of your defense, the rest of your front seven, basically. So if you got to bring an extra body or two to help create pressure and disrupt the quarterback, so be it.
All right, so moving on to the Lions-Chargers matchup, which you kind of mentioned. The Lions are in Qualcomm Stadium Sunday at 4:05 on Fox, taking on the San Diego Chargers. Phillip Rivers is still the Chargers quarterback, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And the Chargers are still going to be another contending playoff team. And we know the Lions are in for a challenge. So break it down for me.
Well, I think the Chargers, especially for Philip Rivers, his goal is to not only make the Chargers a contender in the AFC West, because remember, you're dealing with Peyton Manning and the Broncos, but also a contender, period, for the whole AFC. I think Rivers, he has a very, very competitive drive within himself to not only make himself better, but the team as a whole perform better as well. So I think you're going to see Rivers and the Chargers entirely with a point, play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, as if they have something to prove this year. So you may see that being displayed in this opener, especially it's at home and it's from the home crowd. So they're going to be pumped for that. So, like I mentioned with the Lions, it's going to take some time for their defense to get used to playing basically life without Sue and life without Fairley. The offense, it's no problem as long as Stafford keeps the mistakes down to a minimum as much as possible. I could definitely see the Lions' offense having no problem keeping up with San Diego's offense. I would not be too surprised if this turns into a run-up shootout. I could see this being 28-24, 35-31 type of deal. I would so much love predict the Lions' victory, but in my view, multiple questions concerning the defense. I'm going to say San Diego wins, maybe a 27, 28, 24 type of deal, even a 30-27, something like that. Maybe they win by a field goal, maybe they win by thanks to a late turnover. But, I just don't see the defense being quite good enough, at least starting off, at least to give the Lions a good enough shot to win this game. So I'm picking San Diego, but the Lions win, kudos.
All right, well, why don't we move on to the Mayweather-Berto matchup that you're going to preview. The floor is yours, Ed.
All right, folks. Well, if you've heard me before express my knowledge of sweet science, it should be known that I am a heavy, hardcore boxing fan. It's basically a combat sports fan in general, since I love MMA as well, but definitely boxing as well. I think I brought up the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight at least once or twice leading up to it. Now, as we know, with Andre Berto, in this case, Floyd Mayweather has stated on numerous occasions, once he finishes out his contract with Showtime, he will retire. This is the last fight on his contract with Showtime, and this is a fight that many, many people are expecting him to win, if not knock out Berto, when it's all said and done. It's a bit of a mismatch and a bit of a cop-out for Floyd to choose as opponent for basically what could be potentially his final fight, whereas, you see guys, granted, that may not be, quite as proven on the pay-per-view level, but when you see a guy like Gennady Golovkin, who is, quite frankly, dismantling, devastating, and destroying opponents, having an impressive knockout streak of 20-plus fights, and he fights around or near at a weight class that Floyd may, if he wasn't cutting down to welterweight, could certainly make at junior middleweight, which is 154 compared to the welterweight limit of 147. So Golovkin was seen as a name as a fighter, a name rather that fans would actually love to see it against Floyd. But Floyd and his team has stated before, Golovkin was no option. But as for welterweight, some fans were thinking, hey, maybe Keith Thurman, maybe Amir Khan. But instead, they went with the route of Andre Berto. Now, Berto is no scrub. In fact, before the devastating Haitian earthquake in early 2010, he was scheduled to fight Shane Mosley. Of course, that fell through. Mosley ended up fighting Mayweather, as we all know. Since then, it's been an uphill battle for Berto. He's done three in his last 6 fights. He's also had to deal with failing a post-fight drug test where he was caught with performance-enhancing drugs, which another thing makes, this choice 4-year process that took for him to make it. So why are you rewarding Andre Berto, a man who was caught in the past with performance-enhancing drugs, a fight of this caliber and of this nature? That's a mystery to behold. And also, it goes on mentioning that recently, a story broke this week by way of SB Nation that apparently Floyd Mayweather, the day before the fight with Manny Pacquiao, might have been using IVs. Now, under the protocol of USADA, the United States Doping Agency, which of course did a drug testing protocol for Mayweather Pacquiao, as well as past Mayweather fights, starting with the Mayweather Mosley bout, it's not necessarily prohibited. It's not on the taboo list, but under other drug anti-doping agencies, the use of IVs are strictly prohibited. You cannot use it at all. In fact, it's banned. So for Mayweather to apparently be using this, one, it leaves you open suspicion, like, why would he be doing that? Two, did he, in all intents and purposes, cheat in this fight against Pacquiao? And three, makes him look like a gigantic hypocrite of the highest order of all his years, all his time, pointing names and pointing fingers and accusing Pacquiao of doing this and that, and he's the one that may be doing all the cheating. Yeah, not a good look. So, as for the fight itself, up until last week or a couple weeks ago, I forgot that this fight was going to was approaching soon. So that lets you know how little that I care about this fight at all. Even if it is Floyd's supposed final fight, I just don't care. Period. I think he's a great tactician, great boxer, one of the best defensive fighters of this generation, best defensive fighter of this generation. Period. One of the best defensive fighters of all time. But fans felt gypped and ripped off that he thought the fight with Pacquiao was boring. Even though Floyd has made exuberant amounts of money in his career, he just doesn't draw that appeal of being an exciting fighter. Let's just be honest. Most of his fights are practically boring. But he has a persona, he has a character, that finds a way to draw attention from an excited reaction from the crowd, from the fans, from the audience, that in turn leads to them buying the pay-per-views just so they can see him lose potentially. But it hasn't been the case. Floyd just keeps winning and winning and winning. I expect him to win here against Berto. I don't expect a knockout. I expect a full-blown, one-sided domination that leads to a 12-round unanimous decision. But, stranger things have happened. I mean, for goodness sake, we saw Serena Williams lose today in a something that nobody saw coming, to an opponent I think very little of us have ever heard of. So, stranger things have happened, but I don't see Andre Berto, as confident as he is, that he may be in himself and his abilities. I just don't see him even come close to beating Mayweather. Now, if he gives him a fight, that probably leads to a contested decision, win or lose, then that alone, Berto has more than surprised me, has earned props to me. But I just don't see it happening. I expect Floyd, what he does best, fight safe, fight boring, but overall, dominate his opponent, get another win, get another big payday, right off, I guess, into the sunset as the hated villain, never getting what's his, but still, retires undefeated. And for a kid that grew up in the back, right in the backyard, in his backyard in Grand Rapids, Michigan, learning boxing from his father and his uncle, coming from, I guess you could say, a poverty-stricken background, then the now grow up this kind of living that he has now, with making 9 figures in terms of payday, like he did with the Pacquiao fight, still making double, 8 figures for some other recent fights. I guess you could say it's a rags to riches story of some instance, even though you may not like the character, you may not even like the human being, but there's no denying his talent, and his box office attraction, and I'm sure that aspect will be missed once he retires. But all in all, I'm predicting a Mayweather victory, a unanimous decision, and he'll retire 49-0. If he does come back for another fight, who's out there? Maybe Golovkin, But I don't know if he wants to do that. I doubt he wants to give Pacquiao a rematch or Miguel Cotto a rematch, or i.e. the winner of the Miguel Cotto Canelo Alvarez fight, because he's beaten both of those guys. Look, if Floyd does come back for a 50th fight, maybe it is against Golovkin or somebody else. Maybe it's even Amir Khan. Who knows? But until we see, I think Floyd is for real this time in saying that he is done with the sport and will retire after this fight. And he will retire. He's 49-0 victor.
All right. Well, before we let you go, I got to ask you 4 more questions to fill up the 5 questions.
All right.
Of all the topics that we touched here, question number 2. With Al Avila expanding his focus on analytics and trying to go for Manny Acta, Mike Ilitch apparently cut him off and decided to go with Ron Gardenhire. And so question number 2, why wouldn't Mike Ilitch let Al Avila play his own role as the GM and go with Manny Acta, because he's expanding his analytics, because Al Avila has the same analytics mind as Manny Acta.
Well, it's a couple things. One, it shows how Ilitch is still old school in the fact that if he sees a guy that does have some moderate success in regular season that leads to a division title or even a rare occurrence of a World Series title, and he sees some old school tendencies that he automatically identifies with that. Hence hence him having Leland for so long. Hence him even trying to get Leland out of retirement instead of hiring Ausmus. And of course, now you see with hiring Gardenhire. And again, it shows that until he is literally on his deathbed and cannot make a single move or whatever, it shows very much just like what we found out in Spiro's report, in terms of not wanting Ausmus last year to firing Dabrowski this year and moving on from Ausmus entirely. Mike Ilitch still runs the show. Until he is dead and gone from this planet, Mike Ilitch still runs the show.
So question number 3. We forgot to predict Michigan and Oregon State. How do you think Michigan will do? How do you think the Wolverines will do against the Beavers at the Big House?
Well, home opener. It's Michigan's home opener. I don't see this being an Appalachian State type of deal. I think they're going to handle their business. They're going to be pumped up and hyped up by the crowd, especially with it being Harbaugh's first game in front of the Big House crowd. So they will do what they have to do against Oregon State. They will pull out a victory. I'd say 28-17, that type of deal. It won't be a blowout, but it'll definitely be a comfortable Michigan win. So I'm predicting that for the Wolverines, and will I see them being 3-1 to close out their first 4-game stretch of the season as we enter Big Ten play. That's how I'm calling it. Even though BYU may be a bit of a toss-up, but they have their next 3 games at home. So I see them winning all 3 and entering Big Ten play 3-1.
All right. Question number 4. I'm trying to think of it here. Even though you predict the Lions to lose to the Chargers in a close one, who do you think will provide the most for the team in any unit?
I guess you could say, if I was going to say offensively, I'd probably be saying Golden Tate. And that's not a knock against Calvin, because I expect Megatron to come up with big plays and do what he needs to do. But with so many defenders now recognizing, hey, if you throw it deep to Calvin, he'll probably come up with the ball, because they've started in recent years to double and sometimes even triple team him. So what better way to take advantage of that with another high caliber weapon, which on any other team could probably be a number one listed receiver on the depth chart, Golden Tate. So I would expect Tate to probably be the most outstanding performer for the team on Sunday on both sides of the field. Because, defense, it is what it is. I even alluded to it before earlier on. I expect this to be a bit of a shootout. So if I see one person performing offensively, I could definitely see it being Golden Tate. So knowing how he stepped up last year and Megatron getting hurt, I could see having Tate another very fine game this Sunday.
Finally, question number 5. If Mayweather were to fight a 50th match in boxing against anybody, would he win and then retire 50-0?
It depends. It depends on what opponent he's facing. If he's facing an Amir Khan, who may have, is younger, probably won't come in with an injured shoulder like Pacquiao did, has very fast hands, has good boxing skills, may not have nowhere near much power, and probably has some issues regarding his chin, some say he has a glass jaw, but I could see him as a potential opponent. Fight I would love to see is him versus Gennady Golovkin, because Golovkin, as I mentioned before, is a cold-blooded killer who comes at you, even sometimes lets you get a few hits off of him to make you think you have a chance of beating him. Then, of course, he breaks you down mentally and physically and just takes you out later on in the fight. So I will have to see his style contrast with Mayweather's and see whether or not, A, can he withstand Floyd's quick sniping ability to, hit a right hand, use movement, not get into slugging out, get into a slugfest. Can he go Mayweather out of his boxing comfort zone the way Marcos Maidana did? Or will it be the same old that we've seen out of typical Floyd fights? So there's that. There's Khan. I also wouldn't mind seeing Keith Thurman. He is a rising up-and-coming welterweight. He's basically in the position right now where Berto should have been. Had Berto not gone 3-3 in his last 6 fights and got caught busted with PEDs, we would be saying, we'd be talking Berto LaPraise as much as many boxing fans are talking with Keith Thurman right now. So that's how good Keith Thurman is and has this potential to be. He's undefeated as well. So is Golovkin. Khan has come up a couple of losses. Some of them being brutal knockout, but still he's shown great capability to perform at a high level. So those are my 3 options for a potential 50th fight for Mayweather: Amir Khan, Keith one-time Thurman, and Triple G, Gennady Golovkin.
All right, Ed. That's gonna do it. Ed, I thank you so much. And whenever you're available, we'll do DST episode 167.
My pleasure.
And that wraps up episode 166 of the Detroit Sports Truth. I'm Taylor Phillips. If there's anything you fans want more of or less of on my podcast, please let me know. Look me up on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, Tumblr, LinkedIn, and even YouTube as well. And I will be back with Ed Smith sometime soon for episode 167. Until then, TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Well, that about wraps it up for now. Head out.